Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for attending today's Great Boulder Resources Investor Webinar. My name is Nicola Gazzatti and I'm co-founder of investor relations consultancy Corporate Storytime. Great Boulder Resources is a mineral exploration company with a portfolio of highly prospective gold and base metal assets, ranging from greenfields through to advanced exploration located in Western Australia. Great Boulder last week announced a maiden 518,000 ounce gold mineral resource estimate for the Mulga and Ironbark deposits that form part of the flagship Sidewell Gold Project located in Meekatharra. I am delighted to have Great Boulder Managing Director Andrew Paterson with me today to run through an up-to-date investor presentation, which we will then follow with a Q&A session. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and I'll put your question to Andrew at the conclusion of his presentation. So without any further ado, I'm pleased to hand over to Andrew.
Thanks, Nicola, and thanks everyone for registering and viewing today. And during the presentation, I'm going to be initially presenting a slide deck and obviously then followed by the Q&A. But during the slides, I'm going to concentrate really exclusively on Sidewell and particularly the mineral resource and the significance of that in the context of what we're doing. But if anyone has any other questions about our other projects, particularly now Wellington's coming online in the Irahidi Basin, then by all means feel free to fire in any questions on the Q&A function or email us at the company directly. And this is just the introductory slide showing the other projects and obviously Sidewell being the flagship, Wellington out east of Wiluna, it will be the next major exploration campaign. And we still have the Whiteheads Gold Project just north of Kalgoorlie, plus our roughly 50% holding of Cosmo Metals, who are very busy in the Yamana region. But moving straight on to Sidewell, excuse me. So one of the key attributes to Sidewell, really, apart from the fact that we're finding a lot of gold there, which is the primary attribute, really its location is quite unique in terms of the junior gold sector. To pick up a project like this, really in the shadow of one of Western Australia's most historic gold fields, is very unusual. And there's a number of reasons for that. The principal one is that our joint venture partner there, a very successful prospector by the name of Scott Wilson, who actually sold Andy Well to Dore, just north of us. So Scott's been involved in the Meekatharra belt for over 30 years, and he's the key reason that we've been able to pick up this project. He's had that area under his control for most of those 30 years. So that's really why we're there, and that's one of the key reasons for our success. When you look at this location, really, I think it's taken people a long time to realise exactly how close it is to Meekatharra. And we've got the big Westgold Bluebird mill down here, which is just under 25 kilometres as the crow flies. This circle is centred on Mulga itself. And then we've got Andy Well to the north, obviously Fortnum a bit further north again. There's a lot of infrastructure there. We've got the main Great Northern Highway, town itself, hospital, mobile phone coverage, electricity, everything we need. It's a really, really easy place to explore. So then looking at the regional geology, this is obviously a very big picture view, but it shows the scale of the Mulga corridor down here. This is a 6 kilometre trend of gold and pathfinder anomalism, which we defined particularly through 2021 and into 2022, and then started concentrating on the central Mulga area. And then the other main thing here is really this big fold structure is essentially the Paddy's Flat stratigraphy wrapping around through that syncline. It's a big folded syncline structure that eventually runs down all the way to Gabonintha, about 30 kilometres further south. So what we're now exploring south of Ironbark is effectively the same stratigraphic position as Paddy's Flat in an area that's effectively unexplored. So that's really exciting in itself, and I'll talk a bit about that towards the end of the presentation. But then one final view, which we put in our announcement last week, is just a Google Earth perspective shot showing the position of the Mulga and Ironbark resource projected onto the satellite image with the tenement boundary here, Paddy's Flat mining operation and Meekatharra in the background. So you can see exactly how close it is. And this is actually the Goldfields Highway, which runs through to Wiluna and then to Kalgoorlie. So just briefly on the numbers, key thing here, 518,000 ounces is just a fantastic result for a first resource, and that represents about 2 years of drilling. So that's a pretty significant success rate for a junior exploration company. The other important thing there, 2.6 grams a tonne is quite a high grade for a mineral resource. And the other key thing is this high grade core. So if you're talking about a 2 gram cutoff, we've really got a high grade core at both deposits at 5.1 grams a tonne at Mulga Bill and 4.7 at Ironbark. And that's very, very positive. Many people will have seen this slide before. It's just some of the key highlights really at Mulga Bill. This is the main area where the resource is, and that covers about 1,100 metres of strike now. And some of these kind of headline numbers that we've been drilling there, we've got these thick intersections, 36, 36, 54 grams a tonne. These are really some of the best numbers that you'll see in the gold space. And we've consistently been in the top 10 gold hits on the ASX, which is a fantastic result. And that's why we've really got this high grade core. Again, this is a slide that we've used before showing the long section, and it's slightly out of date in this scale here. Now, this resource extends from this cross-cutting dike at the north end of Mulga Bill south for about 1,100 metres, and that is where all of the Mulga Bill mineral resource is to date, defined largely by RC and a small amount of diamond drilling. This cross section here I put in, and we've had another version of this before, but this is the block model section. So you can see we've got sub-vertical structures, some sub-horizontal, and roughly 40 to 45 degree high-grade veins. And then more recently, this recent discovery of another high-grade lode out to the east. One of the key things here is there's quite a large gap in between the eastern lode and the main high-grade vein area, where we really don't have any effective drilling. All of this across here is just air core, which just drills down to the top of fresh rock. So there's plenty of room to grow just in amongst the resource itself. This is kind of a complicated view, and really this is a perspective of it. You can see there's lodes going in all different directions, and this is the structural complexity of Mulga Bill, which is both an opportunity and a challenge. The good thing about this is the geological continuity is quite strong. You can see in plan view the high grade zones show out a bit better. Here they're somewhat shadowed off by the closer lenses. But really the geological continuity is great. The grade continuity, because we've got such high grade drilling intersections, with maximum assay so far is a bit over 7 ounces per tonne. That means that we really need to do more drilling around those high grade zones to improve or to validate, I guess, that super high grade continuity. And that gets back to the fact that this resource is inferred, and I'll talk about that again in a second. Across at Ironbark, this is 1.4 kilometres east of Mulga Bill. So you've seen this plan before. It's about 500 metres of strike, or a bit more, 580, something like that. More recently, we've got some really high grade intersections came back late last year. 5 metres at 51, I think, is the highest grade to date, and some really big zones of high grade at depth. So that's the two positive things about Ironbark is that mineralisation effectively outcrops, so it's pretty much coming right through to surface. So that means that this is looks like a fairly easy opportunity for open pit mining, and also those high grades at depth suggest that it could have potential for an underground mine there as well. Now, this isn't huge. It's currently sitting at 83,000 ounces. We think we can increase that. The key thing about Ironbark, apart from it being an open pit opportunity, is that we're looking for more of these down along that same stratigraphy. So if I could find another 5 or 10 ironbarks, I'd be very, very happy. Again, this is a similar view of the block model itself. Plan view here showing that it's fairly simple geometry, mainly mineralisation sitting on a lithological contact between basalt and ultramafics. This is an orogenic gold deposit as opposed to Mulga Bill being in some sort of intrusive related system. So ironbark is much more simple, straightforward geometry, just sitting subvertical orientation, high grades at depth. And there may be a plunge component to those high grades, but we need to do further drilling to investigate that. So we're extremely happy with ironbark, and we've gone pretty much from discovery to mineral resource on ironbark in under 12 months, and that simply reflects the simplicity of it. And from an exploration perspective, it's much, much easier. Now, this is another thing which I think people may not have realised the significance of this graph, but mining engineers get pretty excited about that simply for the fact that, as an old rule of thumb in mining, if you can get more than 1,000 ounces per vertical metre, then that's a pretty good start when you're considering the potential for mining. So ironbark gets to over 1,000 ounces per vertical metre down here towards 100 metres depth. We're looking to do more drilling both in the shallow zone and also extend ironbark at depth to try and increase that. But if you look at Mulga Bill at relatively shallow depths, where we're getting these really big high-grade supergene-related blowout structures of intersections of vertical and flatter dipping veins, you're getting, over 8,000 ounces per vertical metre. Now, admittedly, that's spread over about 1,100 metres of strike, but that's just a massive endowment of gold, and that's a very, very positive indication for Mulga Bill, or for both of those deposits. So the other thing, as we've noted on the graph, they're both constrained at depth by drill density, which tapers off significantly. For ironbark, not much really below 140 vertical metres, and for Mulga Bill, not much below 180 vertical metres. So there's really great potential to increase both deposits at depth just by drilling more holes. Now, just getting back to the point I made earlier about the inferred resource category. So this is some of the feedback we've had from investors subsequent to the resource coming out last week. Some people were wondering why it was all inferred, and asking whether that was a positive or a negative. So really my feedback is, having been a resource geo many years ago myself, for a maiden resource, inferred category is actually quite appropriate, and it's a fairly conservative category to put it in. And the reason I say it's appropriate is because at Mulga Bill, as I was saying, geological continuity is really good, so that's a positive. The super high grade gold intersections there means that we do need to do more drilling around those to push those areas into the indicated category. And that is, again, simply a matter of doing more drilling. I would be really worried if the geological continuity wasn't good. Then at that point, I'd be concerned that we didn't know what was going on. But because we're getting an increasing understanding of the geology and we're targeting these high-grade structures, I'm pretty relaxed about the fact that all the Mulga Bill is in inferred. Ironbark has had less drilling. We've done 3 or 4 rounds of effective RC drilling on ironbark, so there's plenty more to go. And again, the geological continuity and the grade continuity in ironbark is pretty good. So I don't think there'll be much, a lot more work to do at ironbark to get that into indicated. We've done diamond drilling at Mulga Bill, which is very important, not only for structure, but also for things like sampling bulk density. Density is very important for mineral resource estimates because we're estimating tonnes. We don't have any diamond drilling at ironbark, so that's something we'll be doing in the next 6 months. And that'll give us density and structural information on ironbark, which again will increase the resource confidence. So long story short, I think inferred resource for both of those deposits at the moment is completely appropriate. As an investor, if I saw a company come out from zero with a maiden resource and put half of it into indicated, I'd be a bit concerned about how much they were pushing the envelope on that. So I think for us being inferred, I'm pretty comfortable with that. Now, talking about the bigger picture at Sidewell as in context of the whole project. So the reason that we're excited about this resource is really that it's a benchmark for what we've done for the last 2 years, but it's also an indicator of where we think we can go in the next 2 years. So what that means materially is there'll be more drilling around Mulga Bill, and we'll be looking to push that north of this cross-cutting dike. The dike is Proterozoic, so it post-dates mineralisation, so therefore it's not a bounding feature. We're looking to extend that resource north of that dike, excuse me, and also continue drilling down here at Loaded Dog and Flagpole. We've got some pretty encouraging grades down at Flagpole in early drilling, but we've only done 6 or 8 holes there, so it's very early days. And looking to increase our knowledge on all of those areas. And then the stuff that's kind of developed in the last 6 months is this area here, which we're kind of collectively referring to as Ironbark South. Now, this is all based on surface geochemistry. It's something that we've been looking at more seriously since we realised that Ironbark was an actual discovery. So we've done auger geochem now all the way down to the southern boundary. We've put that out in a couple of announcements last year. And that's looking really good. And as I said at the start, this is kind of the Paddy's Flat stratigraphy. So this is now looking like, if you include the stuff north of Ironbark, we've got more than 12 kilometres of anomalous geochemistry. And what that suggests is that this is basically a whole new gold camp. If you include Mulga Bill, these are all related. We've got a big granite out to the east here, which is driving a high temperature mineralizing system. We've got Pathfinder anomalism all the way through, which explains why Mulga Bill is there, is with the bismuth, moly, silver anomalism. We're seeing that temperature gradient all the way across in our auger geochemistry, and we think Ironbark is probably a remobilized orogenic position, which would explain why that's gold only, whereas some of these other things are associated with bismuth, a little bit of copper, and moly and silver. So really, when people ask me what am I excited about at the moment, I actually think this area down from Ironbark down to the southern boundary is where we're going to get our big growth in the next 1 to 2 years. So this is our resource prospect pipeline, and we've already moved these two up into the resource category fairly quickly. Drill testing now, those areas haven't changed, and we'll be moving all of these things up into the drill testing category in the next 6 months. So that's moving down this area here. This is a gravity image background. We've got other gravity targets which look a lot like Mulga Bill. There's one through the middle which we haven't even tested yet. That's actually not even on our prospect pipeline. So there's things we know that are high priority targets. There's conceptual targets, and then there's things that we haven't even looked at yet. So there's a really big pipeline of opportunity here. Ironbark South. So the most exciting thing here, firstly, this is Ironbark itself, just this little blob up here. It was originally a 2-point auger anomaly. Took us a while to drill it because initially we weren't that excited by it until we realised the significance. We're now seeing a lot more multi-point gold anomalies down here. That's outlined in yellow. This one just in the centre there is actually where we've got old workings, and we've sampled high-grade quartz veins outcropping to surface. Significance of that, not so much the gold itself, but the fact that it comes to surface means there's no depletion. We have outcropping geology. We're not dealing with alluvial cover or a thick depletion zone, which means anything we find here is going to be a lot closer to surface. The other really exciting thing here is this big fat blob is about 3.5 kilometres long. Now this is a combination of Pathfinder geochem and gold. And what that means is it actually looks a lot like Mulga Bill. And if you look in the middle here, there's a little wedge of volcanoclastics, which is the same rock unit that we have at Mulga Bill. So if this is another Mulga Bill, then that could be a real game changer. So very early days, we haven't drilled a single hole in that. All we know is that there's old workings next to it. We've identified the same stratigraphy through there. Pathfinder mineralisation is very exciting, and our consultant, Dr. Scott Halley, is really excited about this area. When Scott gets excited, I know that it's something that's worth drilling, so we're going to get onto that as soon as we can. The challenge there at the moment is we haven't done Aboriginal heritage surveys through that area. We've surveyed down to about this spot here, about 1 kilometre south of Ironbark. We've got to do heritage surveys over that whole area. That could take a while. At this time of year, there's not a lot of heritage work going on. So we're aiming to get that done in the next 6 months. So the sooner the better. I'm very keen to get out there and hit that with air core testing as soon as we can. We also know there's been prospectors working down that whole area, picking up small nuggets over the last couple of years, mainly triggered by our activity in the area and success particularly at Ironbark. So looking forward, next steps, continue drilling. We started drilling again yesterday. We didn't put out an announcement about that because we said we were going to do it anyway. So that drill rig is underway. And that's working at Ironbark at the moment. So looking to push that deeper and infill that, and then get back onto Mulga Bill and start testing those high-grade zones. Beyond that, as I said before, more RC drilling at Loaded Dog and Flagpole. And then moving forward is getting the air core rig out and testing all of these geochemical targets south of Ironbark. And those, I think, will be delivering drill targets into the rest of this year and through into 2024. And really that's kind of our 2-year program at Sidewell. So what I see the potential there is, now that we've defined 500,000 ounces, I think if you look at the bigger picture and the number of targets that we've got there, then our 1 million ounce target is now starting to look conservative, and I'm very, very comfortable that we're going to be delivering more ounces into that mineral resource in the next 1 to 2 years. So now, what does that reflect on our market value? Really, we're actually down a bit today, so kind of capped around $35, $36 million, with 500,000 ounces right next to town, very close to an existing mining operation and milling operation. I think really those 500,000 ounces that we've identified so far are pretty high value ounces, and it's not just me saying that. It's actually been picked up by our friendly gold analyst at Argonaut here in Perth. So, you know, I think this is kind of a material indication that we're currently quite undervalued and looking to grow that value significantly through the rest of the year. So that's really all I've got to say for the presentation and explaining the significance of the mineral resource. So now I'll hand back to Nicola, and we'll move on to the Q&A session.
Thanks so much, Andrew, for that update. It was fantastic. So we have had quite a few questions come through, so I'll start. We have Great Boulder recently acquired the Narweeda tenement south of and along strike from the Turnberry St Anne's deposits. Can you please explain the rationale for this acquisition and the next steps for exploration activity at Narweeda?
Yeah, absolutely. So the rationale kind of wasn't that clever or rocket science in the sense that we had a phone call from the people who owned that tenement, and they said, we're looking to sell it, you know, do you want to buy it for $10,000? So I didn't have to think too hard about that. And that was great. So we picked that up immediately with a small cash payment. That gives us 100% of that project, which is a long strike from Meekatharra Minerals, Turnberry and St Anne's deposits, where they've been having quite a bit of success recently. So at Turnberry, they've got a mineral resource now of 685,000 ounces. So we're on that same structure in the same Narweeda greenstone belt, just a bit further south. The challenge is there, it does go undercover. We've demonstrated that we're pretty good at exploring undercover. And consequently, there hasn't been a lot of work done there. And we'll be compiling all the historic data where we are at the moment to generate ideas about drill targeting, and then we'll get out on the ground with probably initially with an air core rig. I think testing some of those targets in the next, I'd say in the next 3 months.
Thanks, Andrew. Our next question, what are your hopes for the potential to grow the resource at Sidewell over the next few years? In your mind, how big could this resource be in 3 years from now? And what would be the best case scenario for timing of first production at Sidewell?
Well, I'm on record as being pretty bullish about this project, and I actually stood up at RIU Explorers almost exactly 12 months ago, and I said, you know, this is a 1 million ounce opportunity, and that was pretty early days, really. You know, I went out on a limb there with that statement, but I'm going to go back there next week and say, well, we're halfway there. So, you know, in a year, we've gone from promising 1 million ounces to delivering 500,000 ounces, and I'm really chuffed with that. Looking forward beyond that, I'm very happy to say that we think there's 1 million ounces there. Everything is pointing towards that, from geophysics, geochemistry, drill results, and just the sheer size of this thing. It's actually looking like a whole new gold camp. So, you know, there is potential there for multi-million ounce prospectivity. I'm just going to stick with 1+ for the moment, rather than go out any further on my limb. But what that means is that being next to an existing gold operation with all the infrastructure and support base in town that entails, it's apart from the kind of statutory permitting processes, which take a couple of years, really it's a fairly simple equation to get mineable ounces out of the ground. And when I say mineable ounces, we've still got to go and do all the financial studies, the feasibility studies. To do a feasibility study, we need an ore reserve. To have an ore reserve, we need to do more drilling. So over the next 2 to 3 years, that's largely what we're going to be concentrating on, is basically drilling the hell out of it and testing all those new projects. So we'll prospects to keep those prospects moving through the pipeline from concept to discovery to mineral resource to ore reserve. Another key mistake we want to avoid is starting too early. So we don't want to kind of start mining ironbark now, for example, simply because it's too small. When we do press the button on a mining operation, I want to make sure that we've got a good mine life ahead of us and a very solid, robust investment, basically. So that's what we're focused on. We're very keen to push Sidewell through into production, and that's what we aimed for in the next 2 to 3 years at least.
Thanks, Andrew. Our next question, are you aware of many Australian projects with multi-million ounce potential at greater than 2 grams per tonne grades within close proximity to an operating mill and town?
No, I'm not. And in fact, the reason I came back to Western Australia prior to this role, I was working on a very large, low-grade gold project in New Guinea on Misamar Island, and I learned heaps there. I really enjoyed it, and that's a fantastic project. But the key thing for me was that everything in such a remote location just takes 10 times longer than you expect. And so coming back to Western Australia, everything here is easy. If you've got a drill target, you can drive the rig to it and start drilling. If you're right next to Meekatharra, then it's even easier again. So, you know, this is just the easiest place in the world to explore. We have good local relationships. There's really, you know, it's all de-risked. Now that we've got a mineral resource, we've actually done more technical de-risking. So in terms of comparisons, getting back to your question, I can't think of anyone really with high-grade resources so close to town, apart from our neighbours, Meeka Minerals, who've got a pretty good resource there at Turnberry. And starting off at 2.6 grams a tonne is really, you know, pretty high grade by comparison. So we'll be doing some comparative metrics on other exploration companies in the weeks ahead, just to see how we stack up against our competitors.
Thanks, Andrew. Our final question for today is, what options are currently available to the company to raise further working capital?
All the usual options. So we will be looking, when we do have to come back to the market to raise capital, we'd be keen to bring in more institutional investors. And the other thing is that the last couple of raisings we've done have been placements with sophisticated and institutional investors. So next time we come back to the market, we are going to do a rights issue so that all our patient shareholders can participate in that. So that's something that people expressed to me at our last AGM, and I haven't forgotten that request, and we'll certainly be acting on that.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, that appears to cover the majority of our questions today. So I thank you for your time and your comprehensive update, and we look forward to watching on with interest for GBR's progress over 2023. So thank you all for your attendance, and this concludes our webinar for today. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks very much.